We start, of course, with your main event. Jamahal Hill defeated Glover Teixeira 50-44 on all three judges' scorecards, giving him, of course, not just the unanimous decision win, but as well, he now is the UFC light heavyweight champion. BC, even though he won, and I realize that folks may hear this, either watching this now or they're going to hear it on a podcast, I'm about to ask a loaded question, but it opens up the door for a lot of different conversations here. So BC, my first question to you, loaded as it may be, is, even though he won, did he prove he's the best 205er on the planet?
No, he certainly didn't do that, and how could he in one night in this situation? But I do want to echo the spirit of what you're saying. I had a lot of misgivings about what could happen in this fight and what that would mean to the UFC's light heavyweight division, which, we could all say it's been a little weird and bizarre lately with the draw and Ankalaev and Blachowicz and, Peratska getting hurt, John Jones being away for 3 years, all that stuff. I was worried that, Glover would win and retire. Jamahal Hill would win a disputed decision. We would end up, going here, okay, well, this sucks. The number 7 guy just fought and didn't become the champion. Who's next? What are we going to do next? Instead, Luke, I think I got what I wanted, which there's a very legitimate champion of the world here at 205 pounds under the UFC banner, and it's Jamahal Hill. And it's like, I'm tempted to lead off with how insane the heart and chin, just stupidly insane, the heart and chin of Glover Teixeira, because he nearly damn stole the show in defeat. But it's because Glover fought insanely, just courageously, just ridiculously, that it actually brought out every single category that Jamahal Hill would have needed to do exactly this, climb the ladder at 205 and become the UFC champion. And he was pushed, even though it was a largely one-sided fight, he was pushed to the near limit in a few of those categories, from cardio to takedown defense to getting out of submissions. Across the board, Luke, I may not be fully sure, and we'll only know if he keeps defending this title, where he actually figures in, along with Prochazka or Vadim Nemkov and Bellator or whoever else you like when it comes to the best light heavyweights in the world. But in terms of retaining that feel in the division that if not the exact right guy, one of the right guys has the title, Jamahal Hill jumped through my TV screen on Saturday night with that performance. And to see him break down in tears and be that emotional because of, what a whirlwind turnaround to get this opportunity, and then to go there deep in hell with Glover and pass every single test across the board. He's older than we think. He's 31 years old. A lot of times we think of Jamahal Hill as just a newcomer. He was 11-1 coming in. But everything about this performance was mature. And I didn't necessarily see that coming, even though I picked him to win. I assumed it would be more of, hey, they got into a war and, he caught Glover, which is obviously not easy to do. Rumble did it. Very few have ever done that. But what else can you say, Luke? There were many situations where if he wasn't fully ready, he would have gassed out. He would have been submitted. He would have whatever. He had to earn it. And boy, was I glad that he had to, because now I know for sure this is one of the best light heavyweights in the world, and he's going to have a chance coming up to prove that he actually is just that, the best.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think on fight night, right after it was over during the post-fight show, I was like, I don't know if he beats Ankalaev. Maybe he does, right? Like, I'm not, when I say I don't know, I genuinely mean that. Like, I'm not expressing skepticism. I just can't award him the automatic victory. Let's see what happens if he fights Anthony Smith or returning Alexander Rakic or Ankalaev or whoever these guys end up fighting. And if Jamahal Hill beats them all, then that's an incredibly impressive feat, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I did think on Saturday night, and we should say it too, and certainly me, we had expressed great skepticism about his ability to either defend the takedown or get up underneath or even survive under Glover Teixeira if he was able to get the takedowns. And that just wasn't really true. He was able to defend everything. Body locks. He was able to defend trips, double legs against the fence, single legs with the left leg forward, single legs with the right leg forward. It didn't really matter. He was able to stop 15 of 17 takedowns. Only 2 of 17 got through for Glover. And even on the ground, he was never necessarily overwhelmed. And a couple times he got out of the mount and was able to even reverse position and get on top. So if you just look at the ability to build a game, it becomes survival, defend, attack. He not only had lights out defense, for the most part, he was able to turn, in certain cases, defense into offense. That's what you're really looking for. And again, he wasn't like, I'm not saying he's like, an A+ level grappler at this point, but defensively, even though we got it wrong, it should also be noted, historically speaking, and this is not just true, this is true by a million miles, that was his best grappling performance for Jamahal Hill ever. He has never performed quite this well. He has had times where obviously People haven't been able to get takedowns. But Thiago Santos, I believe, I'll double check here just a second. I believe Thiago Santos got almost 6 against him, right? And that was just a fight before. So it's not like this has been, I think yes, I'm sure he steadily worked on his game, but he had a breakout performance in terms of his defense in that way. So I really thought this was a very, very strong, thorough, credible performance. To your point, BC, he didn't gas. His striking was as good as we thought. I can't believe Glover didn't get knocked out. We should talk about that here for a second, BC. How amazed were you? How amazed were you that he was able to survive? Because honestly, I would not have thought if he had taken that much punishment, he'd still be standing.
It's not just amazed, it's almost scared. And I saw some of that, the human factor creeping in of like, you could stop this after the 4th round. His eyes are cut, swollen, and a mess. He took... To your point, I mean, look, he may have eaten 7, 8, 9 knockout punches, like you know what I'm saying, like the kind that finish folks of many different levels and abilities, and it's a refuse to lose that seriously was scary. Now he showed that against Prochazka and took heavy trauma, and eventually kind of just collapsed, and it was like he was willing to give more, but his body was done. This time, you heard him talk about it after the fight, and I think you saw it if you watched the countdown and all the lead up to the fight. He had no corners cut, no stone unturned. I mean, he came into the best freaking possible shape at 43 you ever could have, to where his gas tank was stupid insane. But his quotes after, "I'm so happy he retired." And by the way, if he had won this fight, it's like he probably would have retired anyway as well. So we would have been in the same spot of who's the real champion, but. He said it best. He said, I'm too tough for my own good. Like he was tough to a level that I was watching through my fingers a little bit down the stretch and really worried, what this was going to do to his retirement and in all the great years he has left with his family, because you can't ask for anything more than that from somebody giving their very best effort. I mean, look, I think you'll agree with me. As much as the fight didn't even need to go to the 5th round and no one would have been upset, He goes for the takedown early in the 5th. He gets full mount. Forget about wondering when he's going to get knocked cold. Like when is that dog inside of him going to stop trying? He never gassed. He went to full mount, and then he's still seemingly one clean punch away from staggering Hill the entire fight. We've seen toughness on insane levels, all across the board. We've seen so many inspirational, courageous performance. I don't think we've ever seen the full combination that we saw here, because it wasn't just the willingness to endure pain, it was the stamina, which was just insane. That's why I love that he did that performance, because we got to see how good Jamahal Hill is. But I almost don't want to praise him this much, because I think he went too far. You fight like that on a regular basis, your career is going to last about 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I described it on Saturday night. There's a term, unfortunately, the origin of the term comes from dog fighting, but when it comes to human fighting, at least regulated human fighting, it can be a valuable insight as well. There's a term called gameness. In fact, there used to be a company that made gis and other jiu-jitsu gear called gameness. But the term gameness means pursuit of the fight despite the physical consequences. And I mean, I just don't know how you could have much more gameness than what Glover Teixeira showed on Saturday. It was a losing effort in every way. To BC's point, the 5th round, even though it was kind of perfunctory, to see him mount an offense, and a good one, at least in theory anyway, at the very beginning of it, was just remarkable. It's completely remarkable. It was as if nothing was happening to him. He was never psychologically deterred. And that was after a 3rd round, BC. Dude, that 3rd round, he took a beating. Like getting.
Dude, you could have gone 10-8 in round 3 and 4 if you wanted to.
Right. I mean, it was headed towards bad territory, and he somehow hung on because that's who he is. So to do all of that through 25, and we'll get to the Lauren Murphy situation later, BC. I was like, if they had thrown the towel, I would not have been mad. I guess you also can't be mad at them, because they had to know that was probably, corner probably knew that was Glover's last fight. And
did you hear on the broadcast? They had Hackelman, who wasn't officially in the corner, John Hackelman, running to the cage to try to tell the team, like, stop this,
Yes, and which is a big deal, because John Hackelman's not like queasy in that way. If he's calling for it, it probably is pretty necessary. But either way, it's the last fight of his career. It's the last round of his career. It's in a championship fight. I guess let him go out there, right? I guess that's the idea. But I also tweeted this on Saturday night, too. Like, no shade whatsoever, Jamahal Hill. But it's pretty remarkable about the late Anthony Rumble Johnson's power that he was able to put Glover's lights out almost instantly.
Yeah.
And Jamahal Hill was hitting him with good shots all night and couldn't do
great
it.
Shots, dude. Great shots.
Tells you a lot.
No, it really does. And Jamahal Hill can bang, which we already knew. But, some of that is, how do you define what makes a chin? Like some of it is, I believe is sort of already there, has to be there in the beginning, a toughness level, a want. But it was that focus. Like Glover had insane level focus mixed with the confidence, the toughness. But, we had him on our room service diaries couch and hearing the story of how he got to the U.S. from Brazil and how dangerous that was. It's like, Ngannou's one of these just special people. Glover Teixeira is one of these special people. So in the end, he ends up retiring after an insanely amazing performance. And let me just remind you, full mount in round 5, could have turned that thing around in some wacky way, but he leaves on the same night that Shogun Rua does, that Jose Aldo breaks down to tears when he gets the Hall of Fame nod. In that regard, Luke, I love that because Glover's so understated. And, he came to the title late in his career, almost like a Michael Bisping type situation where we don't tend to put him head to head with Big Nog, Jose Aldo, Anderson Silva, Vanderlei, whatever your Brazilian heroes are. But winning the championship, having the reputation he has, and now closing his career with this twilight of just insane action and he's in all of these fights. He belongs with those guys at the end of the day. And, maybe the accomplishments he's just short or, he's not as charismatic as a lot of these guys, but it's the same. They're cut from the same cloth, Luke. The Brazilian fighters have such a great history of just being special warriors. And damn, I was happy that this happened in Rio because Glover hadn't fought in Brazil since 2014. So it was just kind of a perfect storm in that regard.
One more note, because this is mostly about the victory of Jamahal Hill. 2 parts to you. One, I realize it's very fresh, but who would you like to see him fight next? Does the Magomed Ankalaev fight make the most sense? That's part 1. Part 2 of that, BC, is, there are some questions about how much the fans have fully taken to Jamahal Hill, right? Because he came out.
Well, these are 2 separate topics, Luke. Let's break these up. This is good.
All right. So first things first. Does the Magomed Ankalaev fight make the most sense?
I don't know because, we all now want to see him against Jiri Prochazka, who we all thought, Luke, was going to be out at least a year, right? And now you're hearing rumors from Jiri's camp that he's in Jamahal Hill references it, that he may be able to come back as early as 6 months. Now, look, I'd want Prochazka to take his time, although we have seen Tony Ferguson rush a turnaround. John Cena in the pro wrestling world comes back at insane level turnarounds. Maybe there's some PEDs involved in that. Don't look at me. But I would like it Ankalaev from a competition standpoint because outside of Prochazka, who's injured, not coming back right now, I think Ankalaev probably the best light heavyweight in the world, but didn't show that fully against Jan, didn't seize the moment, and needs to go in there and do it against somebody like Jamahal Hill. But the reason why I say I'm not sure, Luke, is what do you do about Jan Blachowicz? It's whose fault was it that fight was a draw? He came out there and he fought to a draw with Ankalaev. It's no one's going to sanction that as an immediate rematch, but we kind of need to see who's coming out of that. I guess, it's been done before.
Didn't you come, come on, gun to your head. Didn't you come out of that being okay, Ankalaev should have been the rightful winner and it's
but I can't, better. But I can't reward him with that, even though if you asked me, who do you thought won? I didn't think it was a draw. I thought Ankalaev won by a point. But to answer your question, I don't think you can reward a guy for that, I don't think Ankalaev put his best foot forward in the end. That's the criticism we have of him at times, that he can absolutely dominate, but he takes his time in getting there. You can't take your time on the title level in that type of scenario.